So the cell cycle, it starts off with interphase. And recall from what we talked about previously, interphase includes G1, S, and G2. Now in the G1 phase, the cell, it's a brand new baby cell, if you want to think about it that way. It was just made as a result of mitosis. And all cells in this phase, they kind of get a little bit bigger in size. They carry out whatever function the cell is supposed to do. For example, if it's a cell in the stomach, it's going to work in a fashion to kind of mash up our food with the other cells that make up the stomach. If it's a skin cell, it's going to start to produce some of the characteristics that allow skin to do what skin does. So cells, they all do whatever it is they're supposed to do. And do know that the cells in our body, they don't all do the same thing. They don't all look the same. They do have different shapes and appearances based on whatever it is their job is. Muscle cells, for example, are really, really long and slender, kind of like a fishing line that's kind of extended. They can be upwards of like about 12 inches. That's a really long cell. However, red blood cells are very, very, very microscopic. You need a very strong microscope to be able to see a red blood cell because they're considerably small. But they are built differently because they do different things. But regardless, in G1, all cells do the same thing. They get a little bit larger. They start to, function. Once they get to the second phase of interphase, the S phase, something happens to the DNA. And that's what I kind of have going on the table here. I have just 2 strands of DNA to model the process. In reality, your cell would have 46 of these strings inside of it. And that would be inside every single cell in your body. So I have a tan one and I have a yellow one. But once we get to the S phase, each of these 2 strands, they need to make a copy of itself. So what's going to happen, this tan one is going to make a copy of itself. Voila. And the yellow one is also going to make a copy of itself. So now, I don't just have 2 strands of DNA, I have 4 strands of DNA. Now, again, in reality, you would have 46 strands of DNA, and when they duplicate, you would then have 92 strands of DNA. And as you can imagine, look how tangled this can start to become. If you ever break out Christmas lights and you try to entangle them, you kind of understand the hot mess that can result in. But we do have 2 of these yellow ones, and at the end of mitosis, we need to create 2 cells, and we have to separate these 2 strands so they get to separate cells. So what's going to happen once we get to mitosis is pretty important. At any rate, we are not there yet. We are in interphase still. We are in S phase. We just duplicated all our strands of DNA. Then the cell will go to the G2 phase. And in the G2 phase, the exact same thing that happened in G1 is going to continue. The cell is going to get a little bit even larger in size, and the cell is just going to do whatever it's supposed to do. So this is kind of a recap on interphase.